Hello guys, I'm starting this episode with cutting the machine gun covers. As I hadn't done this before and the guns are already glued in, I decided to try to cut the covers using PROXXON with a mini cutting disc. The operation went smoothly. First of all, I didn't have to detach my machine guns. PROXXON Micromot 230E is a device that is good to have in your workshop. If you want to know more about it, you have a link to a short review here. Then I only had to paint the guns with Hataka gunmetal and the machine guns are ready. When I was pasting the antennas, I noticed that I wouldn't need one of the bases. Unfortunately, I didn't cut it out before painting. Using a small razor saw, I cut out the unnecessary element. Then smoothed the surface with a file. And painted it again. The time has come for the essence of this episode, photo-etched elements. Let's start with wipers. After cutting them out of the frame, I pasted them on the plastic rail using cyanoacrylate glue. These parts were really very small, so gluing them was a real challenge. You can see the effect after about an hour of my battle on the screen. I thought that the worst was over, until I started working on the next parts. Possibly it was a window flashing system. After another fascinating hour of fighting with tiny parts, I managed to carve something like this. If you want to imagine the scale of the problem, this match is here to help. The USS Freedom in the camouflage I made had a brown painted part in the rear of the superstructure, probably a cover when firing the CRAM launcher. As it's slightly ripped, I decided to make it from a piece of abrasive mesh. I cut out the right shape and sanded it properly. The railings were gently matted with sandpaper before painting. This should be done with sensitivity so as not to bend very delicate elements. Unfortunately, I didn't avoid it and had to reform a few railings later. I decided to paint the photo-etched parts before cutting them out of the frames. First, I put a white undercoat. As I had already warmed up the airbrush, I also painted the previously glued cover in brown. The cover in my opinion could be a bit less thick, but I think it didn't came out too bad in the end. After the primer had dried, I painted the PE parts with a mixture of colors already used on the hull. I also painted the hangar gate and wipers. After cutting out this small railing, I've started to bend it with a hobby knife. Unfortunately, these types of elements are difficult to bend properly without a bending tool. I definitely have to think about getting such a device. I pasted this element with ultra glue and started pasting the railings. Sometimes it's difficult to adjust the railing well, especially in places when it's bent. Then it's worth to cut the element into two parts, which will make its assembly easier. Another barriers and the fight with their proper assembly. No bending tool lingers again. If the plates were bent accurately, the installation would be probably much easier. As I have already mentioned, the railings should be divided into smaller sections, especially in the case of such long parts. Pasting smaller sections is easier and the connections are almost invisible. As you can see, the holes for the railings are not always perfectly made. After gluing all the PE elements, the ship begins to take almost final shape. During helo operations, the nets on the landing deck are unfolded, for safety reasons probably. I decided to paste the nets on our LCS in this position. After cutting it out of the frame, I glued in the railings on both wings. And then mounted the wipers. I decided to stick the stern gate in the open position and the hangar door in the closed position. I also installed a window flashing system and I took care of making small paint corrections of all photo-etched elements which lost paint here and there during assembly. The decal set includes the Freedom pennant number. As it was the first in its class, this number is obviously 1. While checking the ship's photos in my camouflage, I noticed that the starboard pennant number was painted a bit differently. I decided to reproduce this painting and not to use decals for this. After proper masking, I got the following effect. I think it was worth the effort. That's it for today. The ship itself has almost all the elements installed. There's still weathering and some decals left to apply. I'm gonna deal with them in the next, probably last episode of USS Freedom series. There will also be a helicopter assembly, maybe the drone, and of course a diorama. It's very hard for me to find a bit of time for modeling lately, however I hope that the next episode will be released this year. Keep your fingers crossed and see you soon. Bye!